Hey guys, welcome back to Development Tank. Pumped for another one today. Gav's back and we're looking at a cheaper site that we purchased a couple of weeks ago down in sunny Geelong. Clients from New South Wales, and New South Wales people are seeing value in the Victorian prices. So this client wants to buy, hold, and put himself in the way of good capital growth, increasing the yield, a couple of single story dual locks. Away we go. Rest is history. So keen to get into that. Remember, if you're looking to do a knockdown rebuild, dual occupancy or multi-unit development site, please book a consultation, have a chat. This is what we do. So hang around, stick around for the episode. This is what we do is run people through this course and help them manufacture equity. Don't wait for capital growth, create it. Make sure you get across to Instagram, come say hello, and make sure you get into littlefishnetwork.com.au. Heaps of stuff going on in there. The fastest growing property network in Australia. Thank me later. Gav, welcome back.
Great to be back.
Mate, a little bit cheaper than what you're used to, this type of project, but all the same, good to get it away. Good to get our hands on it.
Look, this is exciting for us because, as we've mentioned a couple of times on the podcast over the last couple of months, we've been working on, I guess, a couple of different strategies, and this is an example of one that we've been building out. The designs, just trying to work out sort of the sites that they're going to work on, the areas it's going to work in, and sure enough, we've been talking about it and people out there watching and listening, they've been contacting you, having a chat, and we've got some investors here that are quite savvy, been around a while, have investment properties in Sydney and other areas, and have jumped in.
Yeah, 100%. And it's definitely starting. There's definitely, I wouldn't say a stampede just yet. That'll probably happen next year. But yeah, there's definitely, I guess, people coming down that are, used to the New South Wales prices, even Queensland, Queensland's gone bananas. So they get used and conditioned into those prices. And then some of these other projects we look at that we say, hey, we can get you in at around this level, and they're building out their portfolio. They say, wow, we can get in at that level, 2 dwellings, rent them out, 3-bed, in good school zones, good fundamentals, north facing, all this sort of stuff. No common property, 2 separate titles, and rent them out for a long time. So yeah, I love it. I think it's great. We've bought for a few different people like this over the journey. This is one that we want to share today. So keen to get into it, Gav.
Yeah, I'm looking for sites at the moment for quite a few clients. A few come on recently, just seeing the value in Melbourne. And this is one of 3 that we've got that are based in Sydney.
Yeah.
And each of those groups, this is an individual, but the others are partnership, and they're all savvy investors. They've all got investment properties. A couple have done developments before, but they're seeing the value in the Melbourne market. As we know how it's been flat as it has for as long as it has. So they're starting to see that, and they're investing money here. So it's great.
It's good. All right, Gav. So take us to the map, mate. Our trusty land checker. Where are we? Because as you head there, cast my mind back to a couple of weeks ago. I was at this auction and you were at another auction, and two different outcomes.
Yes, that's right. You were down in Geelong, and I was over in Murrumbina in the school zone looking for a client there, and we had a good site in the McKinnon school zone, 50 metres from Duncan McKinnon Reserve, great spot, and it was advertised at 145 to 155, and my client's budget was sort of 162, and I thought, look, we're in the running here, we're a good shot. The feasibility worked out nicely at that number. And it rocketed past that and sold for 1.69. So there's definitely for good quality sites, there is heat in the market already for that.
Yeah, and yours potentially was the house doing a little bit livable. Were you competing against a couple of families potentially?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, this client, their strategy is they'll move in for a year or 2.
Yeah,
they've got a couple of other assets which they were going to free up, and then do a side-by-side development, keep one and sell one. So for them, they did want the dwelling to be, reasonable. They're realistic. They understand that if it's a nice house, they're going to pay for it. But this particular property did have a reasonably good house. It was rented, but it was all bought up to spec, and they'd painted it and done the carpets and all those things. So it was a very well maintained renter. There were a couple of families. The family ended up buying it in the end. Yeah,
we'll find something for them and get something to happen, but it is a tricky little spot where essentially you want to pay as less for the house as possible because at some point it'll be going. But potentially, you're paying for that, and it's adding competition and opening up the market to more people being keen on it. I'm looking at another one down Geelong way as well, and it's actually just land, which is quite rare when it comes to these inner infill sites. You're 99 times out of 100 knocking down an old home to get your development going. But anyway, it's just raw land. So instantly it takes out all the homeowner, anyone who wants to live or rent the dwelling out, takes all them out of it, and just leaves it raw land, and you got no demo costs or anything like that. So on these smaller deals, I think it can really make it open up a bit. And hopefully it does on this other one we're looking at. But yeah, it's a tricky little position. The one down in Geelong, it wasn't much of a house, and that's the way it fared on auction day. There weren't too many sort of first home buyers or families looking to purchase it.
Well, as it turns out, for this particular client, there's another property that's off market at the moment. It's come up, and the house on it it's a knockdown. It just would not be worth putting the money into it to bring it up to a livable status. So the client, the land, because as you say, we're not paying much for the house, so that there's a good chance they can pick it up for 150 grand less. And if that's the case, then they feel that they've got the cash to actually roll on with it straight away. So
how good's that?
It's also a matter of being flexible and just because they really like the area, they've spent a bit of time down there now. And they really do like it, so that they sort of feel that maybe we can move ahead quickly. If we can buy it a bit cheaper, because there's no real livable property on it.
And that's the thing, if they can do that, that overall development cost, is going to be shorter. They're going to get in their new property, rent or sell the other one. Everything's going to happen a bit quicker for them, and they're not going to knock down this, this good asset. And so, definitely better if you can do it that way. All right, Gav, let's do it. Here we are, another north facer. We love these.
Yeah, we do. So I'll just get off the topography here because it doesn't really relate too much to our side, and also the easement. There's an easement across the back, but it's not much to be worried about. Pretty standard. So we're in Newtown. So it's one of the better suburbs of Geelong. Just looking at the map here, about 3 kilometres from the water. Maybe a touch under 4 kilometres. That's where the action is down there. You would agree?
Well, 100%. That's the CBD. For people that know, if you know, Packington Street's sort of the main drag, I suppose, the shopping and eating precinct, where that's a bit shorter, Gab. I reckon that's that running through the E of the West. Geelong West.
That's your sort of the main shopping precinct.
Yeah, correct. The city's got the Westfield and all that sort of stuff. But for everyone sort of this side of the bay, Packington's a bit of a hot spot. So we're not that far from that at all. Yeah,
look, I'm actually a little bit familiar with the sort of the nice eateries and the fish and chip shops down here.
I know. We know you like your food, Gav.
Yeah, well, I was, as it turns out, the regional hospital here was closer to Yuyang's than the city, so so that's where I ended up after a misadventure at Yuyang's on my bike. So I spent a few days out there, and
there you go.
The missus and the kids came out, and we went and had fish and chips down on the water. It was really nice. Anyway, so what we've got here, north-facing block. Now, you're probably more familiar with this area than even I am, because you've been around the area for a while. But we're up. This is an elevated area. We're in the Manifold Heights Primary School Zone.
Yeah, right? Spot on, Gav. Manifold Heights Primary School Zone. And
I think I've got that there. If I just click on that, you can see.
There you go. And sort of you sneak in there, and that's definitely a sought after public school that genuinely, if you're outside that zone, you will not get a look in. And as you zoom out a bit, sort of out to the west, there's a lot of sort of new development and new estate.
We'll go into the high res.
This area here, as we know, and this is the part we like of it, they're not making any more of it. So they're not making any more of these sites up there elevated. They'll keep going west, and that's pretty standard, with all these major centres. They will keep developing out, but as you can see, it's in the very established area, and to its south, you've got golf course, you've got the river, you've got walking, riding trails.
We just look up here. There's like a waterfall or something up here. So
I
can imagine the kids disappearing after school because there's plenty of distractions.
100%, and you're on the tip of that, and surrounded by other multi-million-dollar properties up there. So a nice spot that there's reasons to be in it from a primary school point of view, and then even the secondary school point of view, all within a kilometre, Gav. So it is a really good pocket, and as you can sort of see by the sort of surrounding roads, and this is what happened when I inspected it a couple of times, and also went there for the auction. Very much just local traffic. Just local traffic. There's no reason for anyone to go down your street unless they sort of live in it. So the busiest it would have been, which was on auction day, which was mainly just neighbours just having a look, Gav.
And you.
And me. And me just getting it done. So, yeah, very quiet sort of part of the world. And yeah, I think a couple of single stories will go really well.
I remember you sending me through, or sending our team in our group chat a video of the street shooting up and down. Like they've just resurfaced the street.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
It looks like a scene out of the Truman Show. Everything was just like picture perfect.
Well, yeah, I think you're definitely like a high percentage of owner occupiers through there, which, as we know, traditionally keep sort of well maintained yards and that sort of thing. And yeah, like I said, a lot of good properties through there. So it's really happy with it. Client very happy, as he should be. And yeah, so let's get into it. You got a nice 16-metre frontage there, Gav, which that's how we like to play.
Now, as we mentioned earlier, the strategy for this is to do a dual lock single level, right? Now, with the dual locks, and because they're a single level, the footprint's probably proportionally larger than a two-story. So more land is better. We would typically be shooting for probably 650 square meters plus.
Yep.
But in this case, such a great location, north facing. It ticks so many boxes.
Yep.
Pretty much dead flat.
Yeah.
That we were reviewing the site for a 3-bedroom solution.
Yeah.
So still getting a bit of a backyard, reducing the overall size from probably about 21 down to about 18 squares.
Yeah.
But we feel that because of the area and the site, the location, all those things, we're still going to get a really strong demand for a 3-bedroom.
Correct. And then just a slightly cheaper build as well, when you're building a bit less. And as you look at it, Gav, like without the new 6-metre setback, you wouldn't be doing it.
No.
You would not be doing it based on your neighbours.
Yeah, that's right.
You'd be back at the circa 9 metres, which we wouldn't have a solution there, to lose that. So, so that's the thing. I guess, kudos to us for obviously knowing and understanding what we're looking at, doing the right due diligence, because we will be around 6 metres, we'll be 6 metres from the front setback, which is probably shorter than where our building is now. And if people are a bit behind on their information, they'd be looking at their neighbours thinking it's not a great opportunity.
Yeah. And so what we're going to result in is a patch of lawn at the back as well. So no stairs, 3 bedrooms, and a comfortable sized backyard.
Correct. And like we said, no common property, great frontage, great owned street appeal for each home. So very, very happy. And I meant to say earlier, I've always thought, and it was our first development we ever did, but a couple of single stories, dual lock, single story. And I think they can somewhat be the unsung hero sometimes, because your brain just doesn't always go to them when you're thinking, I want to develop, I want to maximize. But, I challenge anyone down there to have a look on market for rental or for selling, 3 to 4 bed, single level dwelling, brand new or reasonably new. Yeah. I challenge you to look for it. If you find one, it'll be gone soon. Blink and you'll miss it, but it doesn't get done much, and it caters for a lot of markets, especially downsizers that are maybe cashed up in the area, brand new, downsized, minimal maintenance. The unsung hero, Gav.
Yeah, well, we were still out researching for another client down in Seaford, and we had an example there. And there was in that particular case, there was a comp that just finished and sold within 6 months of us looking, and the agent was saying he had 5 bidders. It was heavily contested, and at least 3 of those bidders were specifically after a single level house. Correct.
And they just don't come up enough. And like we say, if they get done, potentially they get done for an owner occupier. And otherwise, developers are usually looking for size and density and all these sorts of things. But to really sort of narrow it down to a point where your building costs are super efficient. So you've gone dual occupancy, which is a very efficient way to build, house, shared wall, and you've gone single level, which is more efficient again, but the accommodation still is quite attractive.
Let's have a look at it.
Yeah, there we go.
So we've got an overlay. We'll just zoom in to hear it a bit more. So again, your 16
Fits the block beautifully, Gav.
It does. It does. So you're going to get, haven't decided yet how we'll do it, whether do an open pergola or
How we
we'll do
finish
a
it?
covered
No, that's
alfresco.
right. Yep.
But still, you're going to get plenty of lawn. You're going to be able to have a garden as well. Currently, we're 7.2 back to the facade, but there's a potential of maybe bringing that forward a bit.
Yeah, spot on. It's obviously all about the heights and that top of that parapet. I think it's 3.6, needs to be sub 3.6, and just depending on how the surveys and sort of docs come back, if we can sit below that 3.6, that's 1,200 mil that will be coming forward that'll be going in the backyard. So, but we're happy either way. But definitely, if we can grab that 1,200, Gav, very happy.
Yeah. So we're not building in Toorak, right? So what we do have is we've got a simple but functional 3-bedroom single level house. So we've got a study as well. You've got a reasonably good sized laundry. Master bedroom is, I think it's a reasonably good size there. With an ensuite, a couple of kids' rooms or offices or whatever, if you've got retirees, downsizers, or a young family.
A guest room and an office for
and again, I think the living area is adequate. Again, we're not building in Toorak here, so we're providing a comfortable family home for a young family or for downsizers.
No, 100%, and just trying to scoop up as much of the market as we can. I don't think there's not too many sort of renters or buyers that this type of property is not going to suit. So I think a good option for people for sure.
We're not aiming for 1.5s or 1.7s in sales.
Correct.
Again, you're catering to people that may have a limited budget but want to live in a great spot close to the inner school zone, and also in close proximity to activity centres.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's the thing, to put a double story on there, and you could put a double story on there, but your build cost goes from there to there, and then suddenly your value isn't there. When you get your vals done, so you haven't created really equity because you've spent it in your build. Are they going to rent out well? Yeah, of course. Are they going to sell well? Well, okay. But as far as the deal goes and creating equity inside the deal, you haven't done it because you've spent too much and potentially overcapitalised.
If only we were still building at 18,000 square feet. So what I can do now is go across to the feasibility.
Yeah, nice.
So advertised at around 790.
Yeah, it was 750 to 790. So obviously top end of the quote range we ended up. Yeah.
But you had, from my understanding, a little bit in the pocket.
Yeah, we were sort of low eights, maybe 830 potentially. We saw value just because of the location. But yeah, nice to not have to use it.
No, and you're saving 35, 40 grand for the client.
Yeah, which they keep it in their pocket. Maybe some upgrades, but great result to get off the mark with a little win, rather than sometimes how often do you end up using all your budget at an auction or even dabbling in a little bit further if the client allows.
So how did you go to the auction? How was it?
Yeah, no, great question. Yeah, well, a lot of people. It was a beautiful day. I thought, oh yeah, here we go. And then, not much activity. I didn't get bid against, to be honest. And the agent said to me, there was a couple of people in the crowd that had got a building inspection. He was expecting that person to bid, and they just didn't bid. And I bid. So it passed into me. The vendor wanted a bit more, but we negotiate pretty hard for our clients, and was able to keep a lid on it at that sort of, at that range.
Still great. It's rare, but it's great when it does happen.
Yeah.
You rock up to an auction, and even if there's people in the crowd and you're the only person bidding, I remember that's how we picked up One Dorothea. Same thing.
Yeah.
Cracking side.
And
no one else put their hand up.
And sometimes you just never know, do you? Like you go to one and you go, oh wow, like how hot's this? And you just run into a couple of better ones on the day, and people can get excited at an auction. But yeah, to rock up there and have a lot of people and sort of get it passed into you, go negotiate. It was it was a good one.
Well, the site that I went to in Murrumbeena was the other side of that, wasn't it?
yeah, it was the other way.
It was like 140 plus over the top of the range.
Yeah. So. These Melbourne agents probably a little bit more underquoting going on.
Maybe, I think it might have been a little bit of that. All right, so we'll just fly through the numbers here. So we've got our purchase price in there, stamps and settlement costs, our acquisition fees there. The planning costs are reduced a bit, just due to not selling the property, marketing and things like that.
Yep.
We've got a project management fee in here, which has been reduced a bit. Just
it's probably
due to
it's on
the size of the project.
Yeah, it's probably our cheapest fee, really.
Yeah.
Well, it is. But yeah, based on our scope, you know what I mean? We don't just have a one size fits all. Based on the scope, we sort of dial it back. So good one for the client there.
Yeah, we want it to work for the client, really.
Yeah, 100%.
That's basically what it comes down to. So from a construction perspective, we're around the 850 mark. Now, we've been working on this with the builder, floor plans and pricing, and that's where we're all sort of pretty comfortable where it's going to land, and we'll work to that.
Yeah. And the facades are pretty nice as well.
Yeah.
So you know, like we're not, like they're pretty hot. Like when we released them to the client, he was like, "Wow, that's fire." So they're cool facades. Yeah.
Yeah, great. So it's a comfortable home, and again, they're going to rent it. So you don't want it to be, you don't want to overcapitalize.
No, 100%. It's a smart. Smart play. Essentially, we're not living in it. We're not wedded to it. It's commercial. So, it's important we get it right and don't overcook it.
Yeah. So with the holding costs in here, how we'd probably normally do them with a 20% deposit, residential lending. What that does is, in the end, we got here equity. So we're about $570,000 in cash.
Yep.
In from the client. We've got a couple of valuations here. We're sort of pretty comfortable, or just under the 1.1 for the dwellings. So what that has done for our client, what it's done for this particular example, and I'll talk about the client in a second, is it's given them a equity uplift of $266,000. Pretty almost straight off the bat. So that's a great position to be in. With this particular client, they've got a few runs on the board, and they've got relationships with lenders. So they were actually 10% deposits on both. For them, it came in at over 60% return on equity, or the uplift was stronger, and their cash input was about 415, I think, 415,000.
Yeah, that's right. Well, that gets a bit cheaper. The thing is, for me, Gav, like if someone wants to go out and buy a property and hold it, go out and hold it. It's probably an established property. There's not two properties on the one site, so your rental isn't nearly as close as what it can be here. The equity that you're creating, the uplift you're creating throughout this process, rather than buying something, paying stamp duty on it. Essentially, you need it to go up 5-6% to you to be at break even. Now we need the market to keep going to actually create your own equity uplift throughout the process, renting out too, so your yield's much stronger than just buying a one-off property. Still getting yourself in the way of capital growth, but then having a brand new properties at the end to be a landlord. Being a landlord's very onerous. So to be a landlord to brand new property, I think it's a no-brainer. And creating equity as you go through, rather than buying one and holding it and hoping it goes up. So anyway, it's a good one.
Getting equity 60% plus return on equity straight away. I mean, that means they're putting in 400 odd grand cash, and they've already increased their equity by 300%. So they're
correct. Yeah.
They're not far off being able to go out and do it again.
No, I couldn't agree more. Doing this versus going and buying something and paying the stamp duty, which you're behind before you start, as everyone knows, and you got to just fingers crossed the market goes up. So I do like this strategy for this type of client.
All right, let's just scroll through the bottom here just quickly. We spoke about the cash input. We have got a chart at the bottom here, high-level rental around $800 a week, which ultimately, and it comes in and it's better than break even, but you've got other costs, property management and so forth, but then you've also got depreciation, which is quite unique.
Correct, 100%. Yeah, so definitely
balance itself out.
Definitely the asterisks on this, land tax not in there, property management fees not in there, some maintenance rates not in there. But often clients will get depreciation schedules as well. So this is all very a case-by-case situation, but can play out quite in a similar nature. But those depreciation schedules can really get you sort of humming along. So speak to your accountant about those.
Yeah, and that's what this is. This is basically a guide that you take to your accountant and you talk through your own personal situation.
Correct.
So great outcome. So they've created all this equity. They're probably breaking even on a month-to-month basis, and they've bought the property in a super soft market in a really good area, and it's going to see growth.
Well, that's sort of the thing. And an overall project spend, Gav, around 1.9-ish, including holding costs. So we're that's sub $2 million, which is nice. But instead of maybe going out and buying 2 properties or buying 1 property, and like I said, paying the stamp duty, maybe in, not in an infill area, maybe in an area where it is a bit greenfield, they just keep making more of those dwellings versus being in these areas, in the old school zones, in the older streets, walking distance to a lot of these things, or a lot of these places where people want to be versus where all the, the migration's happening in these greenfield sites. I think it's a great play.
Yeah. And this investor, I'm sure he had a lot more money to use if he wanted to.
Yeah.
And he's ready to go again with a couple of others in a separate group. But my point is that his strategy was to find something around this price point, whether he could afford something more or not.
Yeah.
And create the sort of assets that we're talking about here. So he could have gone out and spent 1.5 on a block of land potentially, but this was his strategy, to keep it cheap and get into these areas and then roll them over and get another one going quickly.
100%. And the thing is, once this is finished and it's rented out, it's not going to cause him too many difficulties, in the holding department. And these people from these other states in Australia that have seen Melbourne and watched Melbourne and Victoria be a bit flat. They're coming in going, well, hey, what's the next 3 to 5 years look like for Victoria? And, a lot of people are suggesting that it could be pretty good, especially as, interest rates come down. And even, your calculations there around the current interest rates, by the time this client's finished, potentially we're another 1.5% off.
Yeah.
So bang, he's positive, by the time he gets to the end of his project. But anyway, no one knows. No one's got a crystal ball with that stuff. But if that's where he's headed, and he could have something that's created equity and is positively geared, and he's looking for his next one.
Yeah, well, that's the same with one of the other clients that we've got from Sydney. They actually have they bought into Perth, 2 or 3 years ago, and by their own admission, they got a bit lucky. And they're strategic, yes, but they got a bit lucky. They've sold off one of the assets, and now they're focusing on Melbourne.
100%, they're having a crack, and I think they're going to hold. They're going to hold as well, but budget's a bit more Melbourne based.
Yeah, they're sort of looking at spending between 1.7 and 2.
Yeah, okay.
They're it's just really what stacks up the best.
Yeah,
and they're going to hold them.
Yeah, no, I love it, Gav. Well, thanks for taking us through that, and a great little strategy for people that may not have the budget. We're looking at a few more that project spends around 1.9. There's probably a couple that are maybe 1.6, 1.7. So, and we're looking sort of both sides of the peninsula, fair to say, Gavin.
Yeah. There's
a couple of episodes ago, Gav took us over to Seaford, Frankston Way, and then obviously over in the Ballerine, where we are now. So nice work, Gav. We'll keep sort of churning through them, and I think some nice opportunities out there whilst, we're confident interest rates are coming down. Immigration and housing supply is an issue.
Yeah, it is.
A real issue. So rents aren't going anywhere. They're not coming down. So I think investors will be coming back to town. And if you can get in earlier and don't wait for capital growth, create it, I think it's not a bad way to go.
This is the way to do it.
Nice work, Gav. We'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Great. See you soon.
Awesome. All right, guys, anyone that's going to get value out of that, please like, share, subscribe. Cracker episode today with GK. He'll be back in a couple of weeks. Remember, if you're looking to a knockdown rebuild, dual occupancy or multi-unit development site, please book a consultation. Get across to Instagram. We've turned it on. It's building up slowly. Lots of stuff dropping on there. And we're giving you guys the heads up as content's coming out on that channel. And make sure you get across to littlefishnetwork.com.au, Australia's fastest growing property portal. So make sure you get on there. Heaps of property enthusiasts on there. Have a great week in property. Happy developing.